So welcome everybody, and welcome if you're listening to the recording. My name's Kirsty Pakes. I'm a mum to a nearly 10-year-old girl and a 6-year-old boy, and I'm a hand-in-hand parenting instructor, and I'm also a clinical psychologist, and I'm in Kent in the UK. So yeah, today's topic is playfulness, and I'm hoping to give lots of specific examples to make it really concrete. And I'll also be talking about playfulness, but also about this idea of connection, which really, and how that relates to playfulness. Because those familiar to hand-in-hand parenting will know that this idea of the quality of the connection that we form with our children is really at the center of the hand-in-hand parenting approach. So it's like a relationship kind of connection-based approach, as opposed to maybe often you hear in parenting there's an emphasis on, say, shaping behavior through sort of rewards and punishments, whereas this is a bit different to that, and it's really looking at the centrality of connection and our relationship with our children in our parenting. So in the spirit of connection, it's kind of hard on Zoom, but I just wondered if people would be happy in the chat just to maybe just write briefly how familiar you are with hand-in-hand parenting. So either, and it's fine, everybody's welcome, you don't need to know anything. So not at all familiar, quite, or very. And then maybe secondly, just yeah, why you're here, like something you'd like to get out of this hour that we have together. Minimal, yeah, great. Thanks, Harriet. Very familiar, yeah. And hopefully, you know, there'll be a bit, it will be sort of, there'll be something for everybody. Yeah, I like that. Been studying, but it's taking time to change my behavior. Yeah, I can relate to that. It's not always easy to put into practice. It's a definite process and practice. Yeah. Brilliant. Lovely. Yeah, connecting with my kids more through play. Don't find play easy. Yeah. And I can definitely relate to that one. Yeah. Thank you. And maybe just briefly, just if there's something on your mind about what you'd like to get out of today. I've had, yeah, connecting with kids more through play. Role reversal. Oh, that's a good one in play listening, which is one of the hand-in-hand tools. Yeah, more creative. I find it hard to drop my agenda, so I want to be able to get really into play and deeply connect. Yeah, it's so hard as a parent, isn't it? We have so much on our plates, and you know, sometimes the last thing I feel is playful. It can be a real challenge, and I think it's also being kind to ourselves as parents. We don't have to be playful all the time. I can go for like weeks and sometimes months where I think, God, I've just not been playful at all, and then other times it's much more sort of embedded in my interactions with the kids. How to stay engaged when play is very repetitive. Yeah, that can be really challenging. Thank you everyone. So I just wanted to kind of go straight in with an example. Talking about this idea of connection being really important to a child's well-being, I think playfulness can be a kind of fast track to create that connection with your child. So I just want to give you an example of a game that I think I found it on the Hand-in-Hand website. If you haven't been on the Hand-in-Hand website, it's a wonderful resource of articles and ideas and inspiration, and it's particularly good for play. There's so many examples. Often hand-in-hand instructors write articles about specific anecdotes and times where they've done a particular type of play with their child, and it's just a great resource. So I came across what in our family we call the fighting over me game. And basically it's where parents fight over their child, and so it looks like, you know, she's mine, no, she's mine, no, I want her, and you're kind of pushing the other parent away, and you're really like tussling over your beloved child. And it's kind of comedy, it's kind of exaggerated, kind of pantomimey, and both my kids really love that game. And it's interesting recently because they both independently, in the middle of a sort of slightly tricky situation, they both asked me and my husband to play that game with them. So one example was my son was, I think it was when he'd gone back to school after lockdown, and you know, that was challenging. He, you know, he likes school, but it is also tricky. And he'd also been trying out some new after school clubs, which is a really big step for him. And I could see he was just not himself. His behavior had been kind of off. He was a bit emotional, and he beat me to it. Actually, he said, "Oh, can you just play the fighting over me game?" So I'm like, "Yeah." So we did the, you know, he's mine, I want him, you can't have him, no, no. And he laughed and laughed, and you get the sense that, you know, they really get in a sort of deep level, they really getting something from this sort of being fought over as if they're like a precious jewel. And there was just a sense that it really, yeah, it really just filled his cup. And I could see that after a few, you know, it only took a few minutes, but after a few minutes of playing that, he was more settled, he was brighter in himself, more cooperative, which was nice. Um, and in the same way, my daughter did the same thing recently, and she can sometimes find bedtimes tricky. It can be a time where sort of fears and worries bubble up, and she can get unsettled. And we were doing bedtime, and again, I could see she was feeling a bit unsettled, and I thought, oh, you know, this might be a tricky bedtime, you know, it might be one of those horrid bedtimes where she just can't settle. And she said my husband was there, and she just said, "Oh, could you just play that fighting over me game?" So we did, only a few minutes, and she was laughing, and it's like it just, you know, she's just sort of delighting in the whole thing. And then it gets, you know, it gets all silly, and I'm pushing, you know, my husband away, and we're trying to grab her, and it can get quite physical. And physical play is something I'll come on to as well. Um, and, you know, it didn't take long, and she had a good laugh. I think she felt very cherished in that process. It's like it filled her emotional cup up. And then she then sort of proceeded to settle into bedtime. I could just sense that she was, it's like a need in her had been met, and she was a lot more settled. Um, and yeah, managed to get to sleep quite easily. So what I love about those two examples is the way that my children actually asked me for what they needed. Like often I get there first, but they beat me to it. They got there first. Um, and what I think is going on in that is it's like almost like children in this case, my children were like internalizing that process of um, getting their needs met, knowing what they need, knowing that they need connection to kind of fill their cup up. Um, and so I find it really exciting because I think it will sort of stand them in good stead for adulthood, in that, you know, they will learn to sort of be aware when their emotional cup is a bit low, you know, when their behavior starts to go off, when their emotions start to go off, and they'll have that sense of what they need and how to get it. Um, so that's the bit about, it's not just an in the moment sort of approach, it's actually you're building long-term emotional well-being and resilience. It's that sort of co-regulation, that kind of internalizing of how to meet our needs. Um, so I just want to say, and oh, I haven't said anything about questions, by the way, and I'm hoping to have time for questions at the end. Um, and I have my friend here, Laura Ellis, who's a co-host on this webinar, and she is going to just keep an eye on the chat box and the questions, and then sort of ask me them at the end. I mean, it might be that we have some time midway through to ask questions, but it might be best just to kind of save them for the end. So I just want to say a little bit about hand-in-hand parenting, and some of you know this, but I refer to it as a very practical and emotionally intelligent approach to parenting, which really, as I've said, it really puts the quality of your connection and relationship with your child at the heart of parenting. That's like the central, that's what everything comes back to, and that's what you're trying to bring to your child in lots of situations. And it was developed by a lovely lady called Patty Whipfler in the US. And she was an early years educator. And she really recognized the immense value of really listening fully to a child's feelings, the sort of central role of emotional connection, and also play and playfulness, and how important all those things are to children's well-being. And she also really recognized the importance of support for parents, because it's not at all easy. I mean, it's the most challenging thing I've done, and I thought I was quite prepared. So, it is really important for parents to be supported in different ways. It's a not-for-profit organisation that's been going about 30 years. The sort of approach is distilled into kind of 5 practices that are taught to parents, known as listening tools. And Hand in Hand do a starter class, which is a 6-week group course. And each week they go through one of these practices or listening tools. And the essence of them is that it's about building your bond with your child, listening to their feelings, ways to deal with difficult behaviour, and also support for parents. So the 5 tools are special time, stay listening, which is listening to feelings, play listening, which is what we'll be talking about today, setting limits, which is dealing with difficult behaviour, and listening partnerships for parents. And just, yeah, I absolutely love Hand in Hand. It's, as I say, it's very practical, and I've learned a lot from it, but I do think play is one of the biggest things that I've got from it. It didn't come naturally to me at all. I'm often quite stressed by the challenges of life and parenting, but just by sort of, it's been a process over a few years, but I've really it's really become such a useful part of relating to my children. And I talk about it as like a hidden treasure, because when I am playful with my children, it feels so right. It's speaking their language. It feels like I'm really connecting with them. It brings laughter and fun. And sometimes, sometimes it can feel like a real effort. And other times it's like, oh, if I let go a bit, I can actually allow it to nourish me as well. I can get something from it. And I also refer to it as a secret weapon, because sometimes it can really be so useful in those tricky parenting moments. And I'll be talking about giving some examples of that. So just a word about this word connection. Basically, that is what playfulness is bringing to our children, this idea, this experience of connection. And that word doesn't always kind of mean something to everyone. So I'm going to give some other phrases and words to describe what we might mean by connection. So one is like emotional security, or empathic connection, emotional closeness. I like the idea of having a full emotional cup. Or it can even be something like, that warmth in the heart that we feel when someone is really present with us and really gets us and really is letting us be ourselves. And there's a lovely description by an American psychiatrist called Dan Siegel, and he describes connection as feeling safe, soothed, seen, and secure. I'll just say that again because it's a bit safe, soothed, seen, which is an interesting one, really seen for who you are in all your aspects, and secure. And this whole idea of connection is really well evidenced in psychology. It relates to the field of attachment. We know there's huge amounts of research and theory in the mainstream of psychology around the importance of a secure attachment relationship to children's well-being and their overall kind of functioning. And another development that's really interesting is in neuroscience. So there's if you sort of cross attachment psychology with neuroscience, there's a field called interpersonal neurobiology, which is really bringing our understanding of the brain into this idea of the importance of connection for well-being. So interpersonal neurobiology talks about the different parts of the brain, and in particular the limbic system, which is the emotional seat of the brain. And we know that the limbic system, the emotional seat of the brain, needs to feel safe and secure in order for the thinking brain, the prefrontal cortex, to actually work. So it's like we're wired for connection at a brain level. The parts of the brain are interconnected, the thinking brain, the emotional brain. And if the emotional brain, the limbic system, doesn't have a full cup, isn't feeling safe and secure, we can't think straight. Our impulse control, our thinking, planning, it goes offline. And like, we've all had that experience when we're very stressed, we can't think straight. We do silly things, I certainly do. So the emotional seat of the brain, the limbic system, it sort of operates at a kind of sort of slightly beneath the radar level. It's like it's kind of scanning when we're with another person. Our limbic system, sort of out of our awareness, is kind of scanning, are we emotionally safe with this person? Are we safe? Are we emotionally safe in this environment? So our limbic system, the emotional part of our brain, needs to really feel that sense of connection in order to function well. And in order to feel safe and secure. And that sense of connection can come either literally with another person, or it can be an internalized sense of connection that we carry with us from repeated experiences of connection with somebody else. I've just got a few slides I'm going to share that come from the Hand in Hand starter class, just about the brain science. I'll just share my screen. Okay, so yeah, just connection is vital. And we connect with our children by the quality of attention we bring to them, that warmth, respect, eye contact, listening, and when we're playful as well. And at the bottom it says children's neural pathways grow. You know, we know that actually it's like nourishment for the brain. It actually affects the development of neural pathways. We are wired, our brains are wired for connection. It's like food. Connection comes first and thinking follows. Again, it's just this idea that in order for the prefrontal cortex, the thinking brain, to be online and working well, for the brain to function well, we need to, our limbic system needs to feel that sense of connection and feel safe and secure and soothed and seen. And in relation to that, when connection breaks, when our emotional cup is a bit depleted, when we're not feeling connected to somebody else, either literally or we've lost that internal sense of connection, maybe we've got lots of feelings going on, we can't think straight, and that's when our children's behaviour goes off track. It's when I go off track, when my sense of connection breaks. And what we do is it's time to connect. We move in close when it's our children, and we offer connection, to either allow them to kind of heal and express difficult feelings, um, or to, fill up their cup with connection. And you'll see in the healing process bit, that does involve laughter as well. Laughter can be very um, sort of therapeutic. Um, so I'm just going to stop the share, come back. There we go. Okay. So just bringing playfulness in. So playfulness is like a tonic to a child's limbic system. It's their language. When you're playful with your child, the world feels bright and wonderful to them. They really get a sense of deep safety and security. It's like they can feel your love and attention when you're playful with them in a really visceral and deep way. And I really think when we do that with our children, it goes deep into their bones. And it's an experience that they will carry within them into adulthood. It's like emotional nutrition. um, and I just want to say as well, it's not always about having, full on playing with your children. It can be like just a couple of moments of playfulness, or just even a playful tone. Um, just thinking, sometimes, my son gets home from school and he'll be a bit off, and he's maybe says a sort of, slightly rude name, or poo head, or, something like that. And it's like, well, you could go, "Rah, rah, rah," or you could just sort of, I think sometimes I say, no, I'm not a poo head, I'm a donkey head. Didn't you notice? Just something really light. And so sometimes it can just be like a little kind of moment of lightness that actually tells my son's limbic system, oh, here's, mum in a light and playful mood. I really need that reassurance and connection after a day of school. So, it doesn't have to be like full on playing. It can be just a playful tone when otherwise you might be tempted to, be a bit more kind of negative. So just back to examples. So this is another example of sort of play and a playfulness in response to sort of a tricky behaviour. So this was a time a while back, and my daughter had been, she was in a bit of a state. She was very upset. And it was quite full on. It wasn't just light upsetness. She was really upset. And I knew it was because there was some underlying fears and worries bubbling up. And it was also making her, she'd been aggressive as well. And it was bedtime, and she'd gone into the bathroom, and she was in a real state, very angry. And I am not coming out. So fortunately that day I was feeling quite calm. It's not always at all. I often find it, hard to be calm in the face of that sort of situation. I find getting support for myself, uh, hand in hand, have a listening partnership practice that you do with other parents, where you can get that emotional support for yourself and work through feelings that come up. And I find that really helpful to kind of help me remain calm. But that day I was feeling very calm. I was also feeling really compassionate to her because, I really knew that she was struggling. And so when I went into the bathroom, I was pretty soft and gentle in my tone. And it's like her limbic system, the emotional seat of her brain, therefore could kind of sense that I was friend rather than foe. She could sense that, I'm in a safe pair of hands here. That limbic system that's kind of scanning the environment. Am I safe? Am I going to be emotionally safe with this person? Could tell from my tone of voice, my gesture, what I said, that, um, that it was, that she was in safe hands, emotionally speaking. Um, on a bad day, I could have easily gone in a more negative and punitive mode, and everything would have just really gone downhill, and I would have drained her emotional cup even more by being, you know, sort of a bit harsh. You know, that would have compounded the underlying problem. And just there's so much here, but just as an aside, sometimes when our limbic systems, like my daughter in the bathroom, sense friendly attention, sometimes that increased connection can actually bring feelings that need to come up to the surface. It's like us and our children, we can carry like emotional backpacks around with feelings that are stored up, and the best way to move through them so that they're not hindering us is for them to be heard and listened to. So it could have been on that day that when she sensed in the bathroom that I was on good form, I was a safe pair of hands. It could have been that the increased connection like made her emotions actually rise up more, and she could have maybe got more aggressive or more upset, because it's like that, it needs to kind of come out and be expressed. And if that had been the case, I would have, as best I can, I would have listen to her feelings in a kind, supportive way to allow the wave of feelings to rise and allow the feelings to kind of move through her. That's the stay listening part of Hand in Hand. But on this occasion, she really was, it was like a maelstrom of anger and hurt and aggression. But she suddenly just said to me through kind of gritted teeth, she said, want to play the sausage roll game? And I was like, oh. Now, the sausage roll game is where nothing complicated, it's where I just sort of wrap her up in a duvet and roll her around, and she kind of loves it. And then unwrap her, and it's, really kind of fun physical play. So I thought, okay. So we did that for a few minutes, and she was laughing and really enjoying it. And then it's like that was what she needed. That was she needed her cup filled. She needed to feel my connection through play. She needed that sort of love and reassurance from me. She'd been feeling worried, and she just sort of needed that kind of connection. And, she felt so much better afterwards, and it's like it all just sort of died down, and it's like she got an underlying need met, and we sort of proceeded to have a nice kind of cozy bedtime. And it's similar to the previous example I gave, in that it's like she knew what she needed, even though she was in a state, she kind of knew what she needed to get back on track, sort of emotionally and in terms of her behavior. So I'm just going to go with some more examples. So this is an example with my son. And again, it's about bringing a kind of playfulness to tricky behavior. And just to say, again, as an aside, that's not the only, way to deal with tricky behavior. Quite often it's not playfulness, and it's setting limits. It's stopping the behavior and listening to the feelings that then come up because the behavior stopped. That's, another hand-in-hand tool, the setting limits tool. But playfulness is one kind of sort of resource that you can draw on that, I found very useful. So when my son started school, he liked it, but it was challenging for him. And I think he's quite sort of sensitive, and I think the hustle bustle, the volume of children at school was quite a challenge for him. And just being in a class of 30 and not being able to have such kind of close adult, one-to-one connection. So we went through a phase, quite a long phase, of really dodgy behaviour from him after school, which is actually unlike him. His behaviour tends to be relatively straightforward at home. So it was, it was unlike him, and I really knew it was to do with the challenges of school. His emotional cup had been depleted in some ways throughout the school day, and it was coming out, when he saw me. So, one of the things he would do is we'd sort of be walking home from school and he'd start sort of hitting or kicking me. And, he knows that, it's not okay to hit and kick people. And deep down, he doesn't want to be doing that. But it's like in that moment, he doesn't have a better option. It's like, when I lose it, with my husband sometimes or my children, and I shout, it's like I am so invested in not shouting. Like, I can't tell you, I really don't want to be the shouty person. But it's like in that moment, I don't have a better option. If I could have not shouted, I wouldn't have done. And it's similar in those moments with our children often, and particularly with my son. It's like his bigger, better self doesn't want to be hitting me, but his limbic system is off kilter from the challenges of the school day. And what's needed is for me to bring that connection to him, either for him to kind of release feelings about the day, or just to kind of fill his cup up a little bit, and for him to feel that reassurance of my connection. So with the hitting after school, I did for a while go down that negative, oh, we don't do that, and la la la. And the problem with that is that, it just compounds the underlying problem. It drains his emotional cup more. He ends up feeling crap about something that he can't actually help in that moment. So we got into a nice thing of, he'd sort of lash out and I'd kind of playfully catch his hands. We'd redirect that hitting energy to kind of chasing superheroes around the garden. It's like he just needed to kind of get that out. And so, instead of it being at me, it would be, let's, go and beat those superheroes, catch those villains. And similarly, once we were home, often, I could see that maybe he was being more defiant than normal, bit of name calling, bit of kind of lashing out. And sometimes I would suggest a game. So this is a game that we played, which we call the mouse game. And I quite like it because all I have to do is sit on the stairs. So it's quite a nice one when you're feeling tired out. So I just sort of sit on the bottom step of our stairs, and he's the mouse, and I've got to try and catch him, but I just kind of sit there. So it's quite nice. And so he runs past. I'm like, right, I'm going to catch this mouse now. And he'll run past and I sort of try and catch him, but I miss him. So I'm like the incompetent one. And then I'm like, I'm really good. Oh, that mouse is just so amazing. You're putting him in the powerful role, boosting his sort of confidence. It's like, oh, that mouse is so amazing. He's so wily and fast. And wow, like this time though, I'm a brilliant mouse catcher. This time I'm absolutely going to catch him. Right, here we go. And then he runs past and, I miss again. And he's laughing and he's... So you're sort of following the laughs, and laughter is a great kind of tension releaser, and it's also very connecting. So often I will, when I see him going off track after school, he'll do something dodgy and I'll say, oh, do you fancy a bit of mouse game? And then we do that. And more times than not, that's what is needed just to get him back and reconnect after the day at school. So Hand in Hand has one of the tools is called play listening. And the listening part is interesting because it's really like what we're trying to do as a parent is really listen in as we play to what is needed. What does our child need? And play listening has what I call like these 2 secret ingredients that are really helpful for our children. So one is that one of the ingredients is that the child has the upper hand, a bit like in the mouse game. He's the competent one, and I'm the kind of bumbling fool. I'm the one getting it wrong. The second ingredient is that you follow the laughs. So you're sort of noticing what makes them really laugh, and you're doing more of it. So often me being the incompetent one who can't catch the mouse, really gets him laughing. So just to sort of recap. So play listening, it's like you're letting the child lead, you're taking the less powerful role, and you're sort of getting the laughter going. And, play listening can take lots of different forms, and it's just a word for this approach of, tuning into your child, listening to what's needed in the moment, them being in charge, having the upper hand, and you following their laughs and doing more of what makes them laugh. And one aspect of play listening is physical play. So I think in the US they call it like roughhousing, and maybe in the UK we might call it like rough and tumble play. And probably, you do this anyway with your children. I didn't do that much of it, actually. It wasn't really something that I did as a child, and it was very new to me, but we do really love it now. And we have a sort of repertoire almost of different physical kind of games we can draw on in those difficult moments, or when we just need to reconnect. So just some examples are, like wrestling, where you're sort of trying to pin the other one, down onto the bed by their shoulders. And again, it's very much the child is in charge. You're not overpowering the child. So with my son's quite quite timid and a little bit fearful physically in a way. He's scared of can be a bit fearful of like playground stuff and anything involving kind of physical activity. He can be a bit nervous. But what I love is that he's in charge, and he tells me what he needs. So in wrestling, some days he'll say, "Mummy, I really want you to try your hardest." So, I do try my hardest, and I beat him sometimes. Don't know how long that will last. And then other times he'll be like, "Mum, can you let me win?" And it's like he just knows he really needs that experience of winning today. So he'll be like, "Can you let me win?" Or sometimes they'll say, "Can you try your third hardest?" But it's just very much just, he's in charge and he's directing it. And other examples of physical play are just things like, and I quite like this one because I get to lie down on the bed and relax kind of, but, like bucking bronco, where I lie back and I have my knees up, and a bit like aeroplane, I suppose, and he's sort of on my knees and I'm trying to get him off. But again, he's amazing because he's like, I'm trying to get him off and I just can't. And, he's such a great bucking bronco rider, and another one is like, we call it over the Irish Sea. So just lying there, just tossing him around, on the bed, sort of to the sharks this side. "Oh, the shark's going to get you," So, and I think it can be adapted to older children. My daughter is nearly 10, and I have to say it's partly her personality and things. And I do more of it with my son. But I do it with her, and we'll do things like maybe a foot wrestle, or where my feet are trying to get her, and what's nice is, you can just come up with your own, that just sort of happen. Or the sock game is quite a fun one to do as a family. We've done it a couple of times where you basically say go, and you've just got to try and get each other's socks off, and it's a kind of wrestle and a tussle, and it can just be really fun if you're, sometimes if you're feeling all a bit disconnected, and it's just a way of, having a laugh and some fun. And with the recording, I'm going to send out some articles. There's some lovely books on physical play by Lawrence Cohen called The Art of Roughhousing and Playful Parenting. So I'm going to send articles to lots of play listening games. So hopefully that will be helpful. Another one, again, this was that time where my son was sort of struggling with starting back at school, and I could see his behaviour was off at home. And again, I think he suggested it. We were doing bedtime and he said, "Let's have a pillow fight." And the way he does it is he holds a shield and I throw the pillow at the shield, and he bats the pillow away, and I think that's really empowering for him. And again, I'm taking the kind of incompetent role and sort of admiring how powerful his shield is, and this time I'm going to get you, and oh no, the shield, the shield deflected it again, and sometimes, the pillow will just sort of knock me over, and that's obviously hilarious. So yeah. Okay. I want to say something brief about when it's hard to feel playful. This is a big topic, but I'll just say a few things. So, I notice how playful I feel really, relates to my emotional state of mind. And it's something we always hear as parents, but it really comes back to that resourcing ourselves, putting our life jacket on first, filling our cup as a parent. And it's not always easy to do because we're overstretched. But, sometimes it can be just literally, I've got my tea here, but just literally, can I just feel the warmth, just taking small moments. Can I feel the warmth of the tea in my hand? Or can I just really take in the sun shining through? Just ways it's hard being a parent, and we need to find, if we can't, particularly with the pandemic, we haven't been able to get any proper breaks. So it's sort of like, well, what nourishes me? What small steps can I take? And I think for me, watching the effect it has on my children, really motivates me to do more, really taking in, the brightness in their eyes and how they revive when I play with them. And also say, you can say no, like you don't have to always, I say no sometimes, they're like, can we just, and I'm like, actually, no, I've just had a really long day. I just need to sit and have a cup of tea. Like it's okay to say no to them, obviously, And sometimes it can be tricky because sometimes maybe as children we weren't played with much. And, I think it can kind of sometimes bring up tricky feelings from childhood sometimes when we try and give our children something we didn't receive. It can kind of activate tricky feelings. So it's also sort of taking care of those. And I've found sometimes I can have a sense that I'm actually gaining something myself, almost like this idea of like my inner child, or the child part of me can actually really gain something. The part of me that would have probably really liked to have had a lot of physical play as a child, when I'm physical with my children, it's like, well, actually, I can kind of take some of that in. And there's also that relationship between when I'm more in touch with my negative emotions and I give space to them, perhaps in listening partnerships, when I really go there with my sorrow and upset and grief, I, on the other hand, am more joyful and playful. So I just wanted to say something about that relationship. It's like our emotional spectrum opens up at both ends. Okay. I just want to give a few more examples, and then we can do some questions. So just one thing to say is that actually you can also target play listening to deal with kind of quite specific issues. And there's lots of articles on the Hand in Hand website about this, and we go into this in the starter class more, but it's so for example with fear, I think there's an article on the Hand in Hand website about injections, and a mother, child being really scared to go and have their injections, and a mother really kind of playing around with that. And obviously you have to tune in. It's not always going to be right to play with around something your child's scared of, so you have to sort of tune in and sense, is this going to be right now for my child? And you can always start something and then sort of stop and take a different track. But it's this idea of, you know, when there's fears, you know, if you can play listen where the parent becomes the fearful one. And again, it's this exaggerated kind of playful way, watching what makes them laugh. So it's like, oh, actually, you know, the parent's the really scared one, you know, oh, I'm so scared. Oh my God, don't bring that near me. You know, if you have a doctor's kit or something, you know, don't bring that near me. I can't even look at the injection, or, you know, but noticing what makes them laugh, and doing more of that. And that gives, and then if the child's really laughing about you being scared, it gives them a chance to kind of release, you know, the kind of fears around injections. You know, it gives them a chance to laugh and release the whole issue of kind of fears. So I've got a few examples here, and I'm just wondering which one. Yeah, so maybe just sticking to the theme of fears. Actually, no, I've changed my mind. I'm going to talk about just an example going back a few years with my son around defiance, just because I think that's a really common issue, you know, particularly in, well, it's an issue throughout parenting, isn't it? But particularly, this was when he was about 3. So I'll just get my notes here. So this was getting ready for bed, you know, common thing. Parents are exhausted, and there's massive lack of cooperation going on. So yes, I think my son was 3, and he'd been going through this phase of just really not letting me put his coat on, not letting me get his pajamas on. And I had to write about this for my hand-in-hand training, and I've noticed I've written here, I found this tiring, tedious, and really stressful. So I'm sure many people can relate to that. And I'd read an article about turning moments like that into a game. And again, I'd had to take care of my tired and stressed feelings in order to access my kind of playfulness. And I was really tired. I had a lot of work to do that evening. I often become tense and bad-tempered when I can't get him to cooperate with the pajamas and cleaning teeth. And as usual, he didn't want to let me do it. We played a bit with some blocks on the floor. I tried again. He said no. And so I knew that my only option really at that point was play. So then it was something like grabbing the pajamas, and I'm like, oh, I definitely know where these pajamas go. They go, you know, like on tied around your head in a bow, don't they? And he's like, no, and starts laughing. And it's like, boom, he, you know, just instantly, I can see he suddenly engages with me. It's like, it's like he's, you know, you're speaking my language, mum. And so instantly kind of engages. And then he's like, no, they don't go there, they go here. And he actually put them on to show me, because I was like, I don't know where they go. And he actually put them on. And then similarly with his pajama bottoms, you know, oh, these go on your hands, you know. And it's, again, it's noticing what he finds funny, and what's making him laugh. And similarly, teeth brushing, you know, oh, do we brush your ear, you know, or going to the toilet, like, oh, we go to the toilet in the shed outside. Like, no, mummy, you know, I'm like, you're only 3, you don't know anything. I know where we go to the toilet. And he's like, no, mummy, grabs me and sits on the loo, does his wee, you know. And, you know, his face was just lit up by the whole thing. And it was kind of a win-win really, because you know, it was a time when we'd been a bit sort of disconnected, and you know, we got some connection going, and also, you know, through a bit of play, you know, we got done what was needed to do. So just some sort of examples, and as I say, there's loads and loads of examples of this sort of thing on the Hand-in-Hand website. Okay, before we look at the questions, if you, just to let you know, if you're interested, I do have a starter class, which is a 6-week course coming up. I'll just screen share again because I've got a slide on it at the bottom. So this is sort of hand in hand sort of signature course, I guess. It's 6 weeks on Zoom, and there's a maximum of 6 parents, and there's an online classroom, and you get lifetime access to videos and booklets. And each week we go through one of the hand-in-hand parenting tools. And it's a really good chance to kind of go into more depth and get support from me and other parents. And I've got a course starting Monday the 14th of June, and if I have enough people, I might run a second one on Tuesday the 5th of June, starting then. And I can put my email in with the recording if you're interested. So I'll stop sharing. Okay. Right, I think, yay, I was worried that we wouldn't have, I wouldn't leave time for questions, but I think we do have time for questions. So Laura, I don't know how to do this. Do you want to, I could just look in the chat, or what?
I've collated them for you, if that would be easier. I can read them to you.
Okay, yeah. How many are there? Because I want to make sure we finish.
3.
Oh, great. Okay.
3 at the minute. So the first one's from Jude. With physical play, my son, who's nearly 5, tends to want to hit me playfully, snatch my glasses, jump on me from a height. Stuff that hurts or bothers me. Taking my glasses off really pushes my buttons. I feel I'm always stopping the fun by saying these things aren't okay, stopping the connection somehow. If I set a limit playfully, he'll usually keep doing the challenging things to get the playful response from me. If I set the limit in a stay listening way, the physical play stops. How do I deal with this issue?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just taking that last bit. And can you just say the last bit? If I set the limit.
If I set a limit playfully, he'll usually keep doing the challenging thing to get the playful response from me. If I set the limit in a stay listening way, the physical play stops.
Yes, yes, yeah. Yeah. Oh, and that sounds hard. I'm just, yeah, grabbing your glasses, jumping on your back. Yeah. I mean, I would say it is, I mean, that does sound difficult. And, you know, it's obviously perfectly okay that those, you know, are off limits. And, you know, I think it's, you know, obviously, you know, it's about what feels right to you. And yeah, grabbing glasses and, you know, and it's probably, you know, not totally straightforward, but I think if it was me, I'd try and find a way of sort of trying to kind of, I hear that it's difficult when, you know, when you do try and redirect things, but sort of experimenting, and it might take a bit of a while, you know, to sort of experiment with finding other, you know, ways for him to sort of, you know, physically play with you. And it might be just a question of sitting down yourself and just, you know, really having a think of other physical games that he really likes. So just trying a whole load of different things, maybe looking on the Hand in Hand website for ideas and inspiration, but just trying to move away from that and trying to have, you know, like the mouse game or, you know, the pillow fighting game. So actually a discrete game where it's very clear what we do and it's not about pulling glasses. And I think it's okay if he does, you know, no, we're not, you know, and it's hard, isn't it? Because it pushes buttons and it's hard to remain calm. And I do sympathize. But yeah, I think it would be about just trying to come up with trying lots of completely different games and hopefully finding, you know, ones that he likes. So instead you can say, well, how about we play the mouse game or the bucking bronco game or the pillow fighting or whatever. Thanks for the question.
Sorry. Harriet said, what about when kids want loads of play? In our case, lots of imaginative or pretend play at bath time and needing a time limit, refusing steps to get into bed or bath in favour of play. She doesn't seem to engage in this focus level of pretend play during the rest of the day.
Oh yeah, that's a hard one. Yeah, yeah. So it sounds like it's something that, because yes, my initial thought, and then you beat me to it, was yeah, do kind of more of it if you can in the daytime. Um, that sounds really hard. I think it is, trying to do as much as you can. Well, not as much as you can, but trying to do some in the day. But also, I think it is setting the limit, which is, I'm really sorry, love, but we do need to stop now. And knowing that there will be an emotional reaction, and knowing that that's okay, that there's something going on, she's got, your child's got kind of feelings about it. And so it's like, I'm really sorry, love. It's with as much empathy as you can. I know you're loving this and you would just love to carry on um, playing with me like this. And I'm enjoying it too, but it's late and we really do need to, get to bed. And yeah, probably there'll be a reaction, either behaviorally or emotions coming up. And then it's moving to this idea of stay listening, where you sort of move in close and try and listen to the kind of underlying feelings. It might be that, yeah, there's feelings that are coming up. It might be to do with procrastinating about bedtime. Um, it's something that there could be lots of different things going on. One option might be that bedtime's bringing up feelings. It can, for children, it is a disconnection bedtime, so it can bring up feelings, and it might be that the play is divert, she's trying to sort of stall bedtime. So I think it does get to the point where it is just sort of setting that limit. Easier said than done, by the way, but it's possible. Any more, Laura?
Yeah, I'm just conscious of time, so I might combine two because there's
Oh,
two that are very similar. So having a hard time sitting still at meal times, and I've been wondering about table manners, finding it really difficult to ignore sloppy eating. My daughter is nearly 10. Any suggestions for dealing with this playfully? So similar sort of mealtime etiquette.
yes. Oh, I could do with that. Actually, my daughter's nearly 10, and sometimes it's like, why are you sitting like that? Get your knees down. Yes. Oh, that is a good one, because yeah, I definitely struggle with that in my family. Yeah, I'm sure there are. Well, I think there's two levels. One level is because what I notice in my daughter, I don't know if it's the same with you, is that when we're out, I'm sure at school she doesn't sit with her knees up. She wouldn't be allowed to. But also, like, if we go to a restaurant or someone else's house, she can sit okay. It's just at home where, her guard is down. And so one sort of thing to look at is just um, noticing the buttons it presses in you. And obviously this might not apply to you, and I'm just talking off the top of my head because I don't know you, but for me, if I think about me, it's very much like, well, I think that was very kind of almost, there's a sort of shaming approach when I was a child. It's like it was something like it's completely unacceptable to have a knee up at the table, at home. And so I think it can activate that in me from childhood of like, oh, this is really like shameful. But when I think about it more objectively, it's like she's a 10-year-old. It's not shameful. She's just relaxing at home with her knee up at the table. So one level is to kind of look at, the reaction within yourself. I'm sure there are games you could do. Yeah, it reminds me of, it reminds me of a game about, so I think you could probably adapt this, about sort of defiance, and where, particularly with toddlers, but, any child, they're told what to do a lot at a time where they're also trying to develop their sense of self and autonomy, and that can be hard. And so in this game, you can make up like a ridiculous rule, like you've got to keep that cushion on your head. You've absolutely got to keep that cushion on your head. Don't take it off. Do not take it off. I forbid you to take it off. No, no, and they love disobeying you, and they're laughing and getting a real kick out of disobeying you in this sort of playful scenario. And that can really be good to ease those tensions around real life power struggles where, you're trying to get them to do something and they're, you know, disobeying you, because they get to disobey you in a playful way. And the fact that they're really laughing about it, it shows you that, you know, it's really kind of releasing some tensions about that whole issue. So I'm sure there's something, I hope that's helpful. I'm sure there's something along those lines around dodgy table manners that that you could adapt.
There was just one final thing, Kirsty.
Keep it brief, yeah.
Yeah, it was in response to when you were talking about the injection example and doing role playing with the doctor. So what if he's laughing about something inappropriate? How would you manage that in a play scenario?
Oh, yes, it's hard to know without knowing an example of what appropriate means. But, you know, you're still, you don't have, it's not permissive, you know, you can still, you're in charge still, although you're pretending not to be in charge. You are in charge as a parent, and you have your values and you have your rules. And if you know, if really, when you really look at yourself and your reaction, you know, go a bit beneath the surface, it's good to question our initial reaction. Is that really inappropriate? You know, it may well be. Or is this just a thing I've got, or a trigger for me? But when you really take time with that and sense deeper and like, you know, this is inappropriate, you can say that. Or it might be that you can just muddle along, and then maybe outside of the play, you could just refer back to it. Say, well, you know, when, you know, do you think it's okay to laugh about that issue? What, you know, what, and just talk about it afterwards. Or you can kind of redirect things. I mean, in play listening, you're trying not to take charge too much. You're trying to follow their lead. But I think it's remembering you're still the parent and you still have your boundaries and what's okay and what isn't. And it's, you know, hand in hand is not permissive. You know, you are in charge, and you, but it's setting limits with warmth and kindness and respect, which is what I love about it. Is that it, Laura? Great. Well, thank you so much. I'm just going to scroll through because I haven't seen everybody. Ah, lovely. Thank you so much for coming. And there'll be an email from Hand in Hand with this recording, and there'll be links to some articles about physical play and play listening. And also I'll put my email in, and if you're interested in the online starter class, you can email me. But lucky, I think your children are very lucky that you guys have come along and are interested in playfulness. And I also just want to say, be kind to yourselves, because it's not easy to be playful, and just one step at a time. Sometimes I surprise myself and I can muster up a bit of playfulness when I don't think I can. And then other times I just don't, I'm like, no, I need to just go into my room on my own and have a cup of tea. So do be kind to yourselves about it. Great. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your time. Bye.